The hum of the station's old power core vibrated under the soles of Lieutenant Arden's boots, a low, steady thrum that seemed almost alive, like the nervous heartbeat of a creature too large to be seen. His squad had been sent to investigate a derelict sector near the fringe of human-controlled space, though no one could remember the official reason. Officially, it was a reconnaissance mission. Unofficially, it was a chance to see if they could find anything valuable without having to file a dozen forms and listen to Commander Haskell lecture about interstellar bureaucracy. The corridor stretched before them, metallic walls streaked with years of cosmic dust and stray plasma burns. Every flicker of the neon guidance strips made shadows leap awkwardly, and Arden's stomach did a funny little flip every time. One of the flickers revealed a darkened doorway or a conduit hanging loose like a dangling limb. Private Sims muttered something about ghosts, or perhaps space rats, and Arden rolled his eyes. "Yeah, sure, ghosts. Maybe they brought snacks," he said, earning a snort from Corporal Reyes. The three of them moved carefully, boots echoing, each step a small protest against the silence that pressed around them. It was the kind of quiet that made your thoughts louder than they had any right to be, and each of them had memories creeping up uninvited. A messy bunk, a burnt ration pack, a lost communication module, all amplified in the hush of the abandoned sector. Then they saw her. Through a doorway that smelled faintly of ozone and disinfectant, a figure crouched, balancing on the edge of a platform while polishing the floor with a tool that looked as if it had been designed to tickle atoms into obedience. She was human-like in appearance, but her ears stretched gracefully upward, delicate and long, with a slight curve that caught the neon glow. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent in the dim light, and her hair was pulled back in a messy braid that defied the rigid lines of the corridor. She hummed a tune that was both melancholic and absurdly cheerful, a song that might have been ancient, or perhaps entirely alien, but carried a strange familiarity that tugged at the soldier's ears. Sims whispered, Did anyone tell her this sector was occupied?" Reyes elbowed him gently. "SHH, maybe she's friendly, maybe she's cleaning the ghost dust." Arden frowned. There was nothing in the reconnaissance protocols about finding royalty polishing the deck. The figure, oblivious to the soldier's presence, reached for a gadget that teetered precariously atop a stack of tools. It wobbled, fell, and clanged against the metal floor. The noise was absurdly loud in the empty corridor, like the universe itself had sneezed. The princess squeaked, a delicate, high-pitched noise, and flailed, attempting to catch the falling device with such precision that it seemed almost magical, but her efforts only made it wobble more. Arden caught himself laughing, a stifled chuckle that felt entirely inappropriate. She turned then, ears twitching, and froze. Her eyes were wide, luminous, with a depth that suggested both curiosity and the faintest hint of fear. "Who are you?" she asked, voice small, almost like a whisper against the humming machinery. "We're, your friendly neighborhood inspectors," Arden said, giving a half-bow that felt ridiculous even to him. "Human military. Definitely not ghosts or rats." The corners of her mouth twitched in something like amusement, though her tension hadn't left entirely. "I see," she said carefully. "You are soldiers." "Yes," Reyes said, voice firm but a touch awed. "We were just passing through. Maybe we can help you." Her gaze flicked to the stack of gadgets, to the half-polished floor, then back to them. "I suppose. Though I warn you, interstellar cleaning is not a trivial affair. There are protocols, rules, rituals." Her tone was formal, yet there was a faint exasperation beneath it, like a teacher scolding herself for letting a mischievous student sneak past the lesson plan. Sims snorted. "Protocols, huh? Bet you've got a whole royal manual for mop placement and polish thickness." Her ears twitched, and for a fraction of a second Arden thought she might glare, but instead she laughed. A short, genuine laugh that made the air feel lighter. "You humans! I should report this insolence to my courtiers, but it is amusing." The soldiers stepped cautiously into the room, making clumsy attempts to appear useful. One grabbed a gadget and immediately set it upside down, prompting the princess to facepalm so hard her long ears twitched like the antennas of some high-tech radar. No, no, that is not how you calibrate the quantum polisher. You will, oh, never mind. Just please don't break anything. Arden and his squad exchanged awkward smiles. Reyes muttered, "At least she's not hostile." Sims added, "Yet." Hours seemed to stretch and shrink at the same time as they moved through her ship, fumbling over tools, getting tangled in floating wires, accidentally activating small cleaning drones that buzzed around like overeager bees. The princess guided them, sometimes gently, sometimes with sharp bursts of frustrated authority, all the while humming and muttering about duty, honor, and the tragic poetry of polishing anti-gravity rails. Arden realized he was smiling more than he had in weeks, caught up in the absurdity, the tension slowly dissolving into something warm and almost domestic. Finally, she paused, leaning on her mop, breathing a little heavier than necessary. Her long ears quivered slightly, a subtle sign of vulnerability, and she looked at the soldiers not with command but with something else. Hope, perhaps, or relief. Arden found his throat tight, surprised at the empathy that welled up so quickly, so intensely, for a creature from another world, another culture, who was simultaneously a princess and a lonely worker trapped by duty. You are very kind," she said softly, "even if you make a mess of my protocols." Arden nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "We'll try not to break the universe too badly while helping you clean." Her laugh came again, light, musical, teasing. "Then perhaps this day will not be entirely wasted." And as the neon hum of the ship surrounded them, the corridor alive with buzzing drones, flickering lights, and clumsy soldiers, a strange, delicate connection formed, fragile and unexpected, between human and alien, laughter and duty, vulnerability and trust. The next day, or what passed for a day aboard a ship where the light cycles were governed by aging plasma panels rather than natural suns, the soldiers returned, more cautiously confident than they had expected. Lieutenant Arden led the way, boots clanking softly against the deck plates, followed by Reyes and the eternally jittery Sims, whose gaze darted nervously between the ceiling and every shadowed corner. The corridors smelled faintly of ozone and cleaning solution, and the faint hum of machinery vibrated through the walls like the heartbeat of a restless leviathan. Their presence no longer startled the crew of one. The alien princess had already become an eccentric, fascinating anomaly in their mental map of the galaxy, something between a problem and a mystery worth exploring. She was waiting in the same chamber as before, crouched over a levitating cleaning drone that spun lazily in midair, polishing the metallic floor with uncanny precision. Her long ears twitched as she hummed a tune that seemed to wobble between melancholy and mockery, a melody so alien that Arden could almost feel the notes bouncing against the molecules in the room. She looked up and her eyes, luminous and pale, brightened at the sight of the soldiers, as if the universe had remembered to offer a small reprieve from monotony. "Ah," she said, a little too dramatically, "the cavalry returns. Will you assist in the endless battle against dirt and chaos once more?" Sims saluted awkwardly. "Yes, ma'am, ready to wield whatever cleaning artillery you've got." She rolled her eyes, ears flicking impatiently. "Artillery, really? You humans and your penchant for exaggeration." She gestured toward a series of small floating orbs, each humming faintly, designed to absorb dust particles down to the subatomic level. "These are quantum dust absorbers, not artillery. Please try to maintain a minimal level of decorum, or I shall instruct them to chase you relentlessly." Reyes muttered under his breath, "Chasing drones. I think I'd prefer artillery." The princess ignored him, crouching beside the orbs and issuing soft commands in a language that sounded like liquid glass clinking against crystal. The orbs vibrated and whirred in response, spinning in graceful arcs, and for a moment the soldiers were so entranced they forgot the absurdity of the situation. It was impossible not to admire her, precise, poised, yet absurdly human in her quirks. One misstep, a twitch of a long ear, and she would scold herself quietly, muttering about inefficiency and royal expectations. "All right, let's get started," Arden said, picking up one of the alien gadgets. It seemed harmless enough, a small cylinder with shifting lights. But the moment he activated it, a thin stream of translucent foam shot out, splattering across the nearest wall. Sims yelped and tried to catch it, slipping and almost colliding with a floating orb that hummed angrily, producing a sound somewhere between a squeak and a tiny sigh. The princess waved a hand and the orb stopped midair, hovering with perfect balance. "I warned you, it has no sense of humor for clumsy humans." She stepped closer, ears flicking with amusement as she adjusted the orb's trajectory, preventing disaster. "Although perhaps some humor is necessary, at least you are entertaining." Arden tried to suppress his laugh as he wiped the foam off his uniform. "Entertaining, yes, that's us, specialists in interstellar comedy and botched cleaning." Her lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "I shall allow it for now." Hours passed in a peculiar blend of chaos and precision. The soldiers stumbled over floating conduits, activated gadgets they did not understand, and argued humorously over the correct way to operate a mop that defied gravity, all while the princess guided them with patience, gentle rebukes, and occasional sarcastic remarks that had them ducking to avoid the twitch of her long ears. At one point she stopped, breathing slightly heavier than necessary, and gestured toward the far end of the chamber where a panel hummed softly. "That panel," she said, "controls the microclimate of this sector. Misalign it, and you will turn the station into a sauna or worse, a snowstorm." Sims froze. "You mean like inside here?" "Yes," she said with a sigh. "I have survived many threats, but careless humans almost always prove the most amusing." Despite the humor, there was an undercurrent of fatigue in her voice. Arden noticed it, the subtle slump of her shoulders, the way her ears drooped slightly, a faint sign of strain. He felt a tug of empathy that went beyond fascination, deeper than mere curiosity. She was a princess, yes, but also a worker, burdened with endless duty and protocol. During a brief pause, the soldiers shared some of their rations with her, an assortment of compressed nutrition packs that fizzed and popped in strange colors when exposed to air. She examined them with delicate suspicion, sniffed cautiously, and then took a small bite, her face lighting with surprise. "Remarkable," she murmured. "You humans eat the most curious things and yet survive." Ray smirked. "We've had centuries of practice, and luck, mostly luck." Laughter rang softly in the chamber, blending with the hum of drones and the faint buzz of the machinery. Even the princess laughed, a musical sound that echoed lightly against the metal walls. For the first time, Arden realized that humor could disarm more effectively than weapons, that camaraderie could bridge the vast gulf between species. Then, as they worked, the princess began to talk, not about cleaning, not about protocols, but about her life aboard the ship. She spoke of formal ceremonies she despised, of endless councils that left her exhausted, and of the isolation that made every corridor feel longer than it should. Her long ears twitched with every word, her luminous eyes distant for a moment. Yet even in vulnerability there was grace, a quiet dignity that left the soldiers awestruck. Arden found himself wondering at the oddity of it all, a royal figure commanding empires, yet kneeling to polish a floor, laughing at human blunders, and sharing her rare, unguarded moments with strangers from a distant world. There was something profoundly human in her contradictions. And in that chamber, amid floating drones, slick floors, and foamy mishaps, a fragile thread of trust began to form, spun between alien and human, laughter and empathy, awkwardness and understanding. By the time they paused for a brief rest, the ship felt less like a cold, isolated vessel, and more like a space where connection, humor, and unspoken compassion could flourish, even in the vast, indifferent galaxy outside. The alarms blared suddenly, shrill and insistent, slicing through the usual hum of the ship like a blade through still air. Sparks flickered along the conduit above the main chamber, casting jagged shadows that danced across the walls and the pale face of the princess. Her long ears twitched sharply, a signal Arden had learned over the past days to read as both fear and focus. The soldiers leapt into action, instinct taking over their usual clumsy coordination. Yet even amid the chaos, humor flickered in their gestures. Sims accidentally slipped on a patch of lubricated flooring and rolled harmlessly into a pile of quantum dust, letting out a yelp that made Ray's snicker and the princess actually laugh, despite the rising tension. "It's a minor microclimate disruption," she called over the din, voice firm but carrying a hint of exasperation. "If we do not stabilize it, this sector will either freeze or roast in less than 3 minutes. Pay attention, please, and try not to break anything else." Her tone was equal parts command and plea, and Arden felt a pang of sympathy. He had seen leaders in command situations, but this was different. She was alone with her crew, responsible for the well-being of this entire vessel, and yet she had shared with them the laughter, the chores, the little absurdities of her life. That combination of vulnerability and authority was intoxicating and humbling. The soldiers split tasks under her guidance, moving with more precision than before, though mistakes were inevitable. Arden fumbled with a control panel, accidentally switching the polarity of a minor environmental regulator, causing a sudden, gentle shower of luminescent particles to rain down like alien snow. Sims shrieked, ducking under the glow, while Rays laughed and pointed at Arden. The princess shook her head, ears flicking irritably, and muttered, "Humans, always the comic relief." She then corrected the polarity with a precise motion, the particles settling harmlessly on the floor and dissolving into harmless sparks. Arden grinned, despite himself. Chaos could be funny when guided by someone who balanced expertise with patience. As the emergency waned, she stepped back, wiping faint sweat from her brow. "You have survived the first test. The second is merely your ability to endure my continued supervision and commentary," she said, flicking a glance at Arden, who felt a strange warmth at the teasing tone. There was a vulnerability behind her confidence, a thread of exhaustion that belied the poise she maintained. Her long ears twitched softly, a subtle sign of relief mingled with tension. Minutes later, with systems restored and the chamber quiet once more, the princess slumped slightly onto the edge of a console, sighing. "You see," she began, almost to herself, "this is the life of a princess. Command and control, endless responsibilities, isolation, and yet, when human soldiers stumble into my existence, I realize I am not entirely alone." Her voice trembled just enough for Arden to see the depth of her fatigue and the weight she carried. The tears came quietly at first, spilling down her pale cheeks, catching the faint glow of the neon strips. Arden felt his own throat tighten, an unexpected rush of protectiveness and empathy rising within him. Rays reached out instinctively, awkwardly placing a hand on her shoulder, which she accepted without hesitation. Sims, unable to resist humor even in moments of tenderness, quipped, "Well, at least our cleaning skills finally brought someone to tears. Take that, training manuals." The princess laughed softly through her tears, ears twitching in amusement, the tension in the room lightening imperceptibly. Arden moved closer, kneeling beside her, steadying the trembling figure. "You don't have to carry all of it alone," he said. "Not while we're here. We'll help, even if it's just a little." The princess looked at him, eyes wide, and for the first time, Arden thought he saw not a ruler or a royal facade, but someone entirely human in her desire for connection, for understanding, for being seen without expectation. Hours passed as they cleaned together once more, the process less about efficiency than shared labor, laughter, and understanding. The soldiers learned not just the intricacies of alien cleaning apparatus, but also the rhythm of her moods, the subtle cues of her long ears, the sighs and smiles that marked her exhaustion and her amusement. In return, she shared stories of galactic negotiations, of distant worlds with suns of impossible colors, of the loneliness that came with crowns and expectations. Arden realized that heroism was not always about firepower or strategy. Sometimes it was about empathy, about steady presence, about listening and laughing with someone across the stars. By the time they paused for the final rest, the chamber felt transformed. No longer a cold, metallic vessel of duty and isolation, it was a small haven carved from laughter, vulnerability, and trust. The princess's tears had dried, replaced by a faint, gentle smile that reached her eyes and tugged at her ears. Arden felt a quiet pride, a subtle shift in himself. He had seen someone beyond the title, beyond the rank, and had acted with compassion instead of protocol. He understood in that moment that connection could survive even the vast distances between worlds, even the weight of expectations carried across light years. The princess stood then, brushing herself off, and gestured toward the now-polished floors and perfectly aligned gadgets. "You have done well," she said softly, a hint of humor still in her voice. "And remarkably, you have not broken the universe entirely." Sim snorted, "Yet." The princess's laughter rang through the chamber, musical and light, echoing softly against the walls. Arden smiled, feeling the tension of the past days melt away, replaced by a sense of completion, of connection, and of shared experience. In the vastness of space, amid the uncertainty and danger, they had carved a moment of humanity, humor, and understanding. As the soldiers prepared to leave, the princess gave them a small bow, long ears flicking in amusement. "You may return whenever you wish. Perhaps the next time, you will bring fewer mistakes and more courage."